I was thinking of another show, and this could be, it's a comedy on Showtime. If we ever talked about Californication, have you ever seen that?
We've not yet, but I've seen it. Yeah, I love that show.
Okay, so yeah, so it's a great show, and it's definitely a comedy, and that these two people, they've never been married. That the main two people should be together, and yet everything that Hank does in the show drives the wedge between them, right? Everything that he gets into situations which sometimes are this kind of situation where it's read the wrong way, but a lot of times it's a situation where he makes huge mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a product of that the character, isn't it? Yeah. Really, like, so which makes it, obviously there's like, you get to foreshadow that at the beginning because obviously they're not hooking up because they're a certain way, and then the fact that they're a certain way leads them into this situation that just gets perceived as just terrible.
Yeah, exactly, and it just continually makes it pushes them farther apart, and you're like, how are they ever going to be able to bridge this gap? And of course, that's a soap opera type comedy show, which continued on for several seasons, and they had to keep upping it all the time. But in a book, this could work too. And I think the cool thing about a show like that is that it deals with real human emotions, and it's not just the typical misunderstanding. Like, it really deals with with problems that are going on, and so you can have this comedy which makes it accessible to discuss some problems that happen in people's lives, and I think that's kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, it is. It's some really kind of it can be funny, but also discussing some like really tangled situations that can arise, and it isn't just as simple as say like in the standard rom-com where, like we say, walking in and there's someone there and it looks really weird, and it could be like really complicated and really relevant to the reader's life.
Yeah, well, and I think comedy has been one of these great story mechanisms that you can examine our culture and be able to talk about things. The show Archie Bunker, it dealt with racism, and it dealt with transgender, and it dealt with homosexuality, and it dealt with all these social issues going on at the time, civil rights, and it put it into comedy. And it had the uppity guy who was the bigot, but as a viewer, you can watch it and you're like, well, I don't want to be him. I want to be over here and stuff like that, but I can laugh at the situations that are going on. Family Guy does the same thing, like it has incredibly weird situations that it puts people in, but it actually does make you think about the society that you live in. And you're like, what? Can we really talk about that? And I think it can open up a dialogue where you can have some really interesting conversation that you might not be able to get other places.
That's it. Yeah, I was sort of just thinking down the road then of, it's kind of like, a message of like not to take some things so seriously, but as well, like a real like product of that is to open up that dialogue and have people, put the book down. And I'm not saying, you need to write something that's really going to change people's lives, but, we think that sometimes comedies are just for a lighthearted laugh, but sometimes they're not, and they do promote this sort of conversation that you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. We can make our work do so many other things, and this is one of the ways that you can really trick people into into learning something about themselves at the end.
Like when the sort of like sometimes I'll finish laughing and I'll be like, oh my God, I just learned something.
Yeah. I'm done with this show. So after everything, of course, goes terribly wrong in a comedy plot here, the third thing in the final act is that everything comes to light, and it's amazing. This whole tangled web gets all taken care of, and miraculously everything is good. And no matter how big of an ass everybody was during the rest of the story, everyone can get together happily ever after at the end here. Everything is cool, it's all forgiven, and everything works out.
Yeah, that's the fiction part.
It really is.
Some of the things like Hank did in
Oh yeah.
Californication. It's like there's no going back.
No, there isn't. I mean, you root for Hank, but at the end of that show, you're just like, well, like if they had one more episode, he'd screw it up again.
But I mean, that's the power, isn't it? Where you can connect to this main character and see the human side to them. And that, sometimes we have these expectations that like people aren't going to like make mistakes or like mess up. And, this like story structure is a chance to say like, look, everyone does it. Some people just cover it up a little bit.
That's right. And it really is, this is humanity at its finest, is done in the comedy, is that and one of the cool things with this is that it's exposure, right? I mean, everything in the comedy is exposure. Like it's opening up the closed doors. It's putting the dirty laundry out in front of everybody. It's everyone finds out what a jerk the guy is, or whatever it happens to be. Where in real life, maybe only a couple people know it, and your neighbors don't know all the truth, and your family doesn't know all the truth, and it's always this hidden stuff that's going on. But in a comedy, it's all out there for everyone to see.
Thank you for listening, and come back next week for more. Please visit thebookeditorshow.com for show notes, links to guests, books and extras, and for information on how to be a guest on the show.